Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, a railroad strike could happen, affecting 100,000 workers and the economy. We'll have that story. Plus, we'll take a look at why some experts believe Israel and Iran could work together in a plan they're calling the Cyrus Accords.
That act of inclusion and tolerance, has always been held up as an example of what is possible in cooperation between people of different faiths but similar morals and values.
And as the new school year begins, children are being faced with many social issues.
Pornography, LGBTQ, and also just on worldviews, multiple worldviews being talked through and talked about.
We'll take a look at how parents should respond. All these stories and more coming up next from the CBN Newsroom.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
I want to begin this half hour with a major story that could affect the U.S. economy. More than 100,000 railroad workers are threatening to go on strike over worker pay, health care, and other issues. Unions are now negotiating with the nation's biggest freight railroads. If a deal is not made by passenger service, supply chains and jobs could be affected and cause the economy an estimated $2 billion a day. Right now, some long-distance Amtrak train services could be suspended. It could happen as early as today. Several in Congress are working to avert that. The deadline for a deal is Friday at 12:01 a.m. The U.S. could see a rise in gas and energy prices this winter. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said higher prices are a risk as the European Union pursues its plan to halt Russian oil imports.
Winter, the European Union will cease, for the most part, buying Russian oil. It is possible that that could cause a spike in oil prices.
Gas prices reached an all-time high earlier this year. While they've dropped in recent months, the average price for a gallon of gas is still more than $3.70. That, along with high inflation, has put the Biden administration on the defensive for its economic policies. A new poll shows a majority of adults in the United States believe health care is not handled well in the country. The poll from the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research says only 12% say health care is handled extremely or very well. Overall, the public gives even lower marks for the handling of prescription drug costs, mental health care, and quality care of nursing homes. Ukrainians are fighting smarter, using technology like tiny drones that can destroy hundreds of tanks. Their strategy is paying off. Russian forces pulled back in the face of a fierce counterattack that's retaken crucial areas of the Kharkiv region. Ukraine's success is due in part to military aid sent by the West and technology given by private donors. Chuck Holton brings us the story now from the front lines.
Ukrainians hope their military's counteroffensive in the east could signal a turning point in the war. The ongoing operation has been so successful, the Ukrainian army has retaken more ground in 5 days than the Russians captured in the past 5 months.
This operation was possible because of the resolve of the armed forces, because our commanders, from the president to every commander in the battlefield, are so devoted to the victory.
The city of Kharkiv has endured almost daily rocket attacks since April. On Sunday, a Russian missile strike took out the power grid, causing the city to go dark. It once held 1 million people, but is now relatively empty, and those who stayed live in constant fear of death from a Russian missile. Now, nearby villages feel hopeful as Ukrainian troops push the invaders out. Up until now, Russia has held a huge advantage in tanks and artillery, but the Ukrainians have figured out how to turn off-the-shelf technology into a force multiplier, making a commercial drone nearly equal to a Russian tank in combat power.
One of our soldiers with the technology, it's stronger than maybe 10 or 20 soldiers from Russia.
If you were unfamiliar with warfare, you might say that there was heavy fighting going on in this area where we are, in a place called Pisky in the southern part of Donetsk province. And though there have been artillery barrages going near constantly for the several hours that we've been here now, it doesn't necessarily qualify as a pitched battle. That's because the Russians are just randomly firing artillery pretty much all day long, all night long. They have a near limitless supply of that, but they're not really making any gains. And that's because the Ukrainians are fighting smarter. And in so doing, they can hold off the Russians, even though the Russians outnumber them about 50-1.
The technology now is good. When you have a mobile phone and you can fighting with the technology, this helps us to win.
A Russian tank costs about $4.5 million to build, while an off-the-shelf drone runs a little over $1,000. Since these tiny drones are responsible for destroying hundreds of tanks, that makes them priceless for these Ukrainian airborne troopers.
Rather than fight the Russian tanks head-to-head, we use the drones to spot the enemy positions, then pass that information on to our long-range artillery to be destroyed. The only thing we need is more ammo. If we had enough ammunition, the enemy wouldn't stand a chance.
Many of these drones and internet systems have been donated, courtesy of individuals giving to crowdfunding projects. For these troops who've been fighting without a break since the war began, it brings hope. They may soon get back to their loved ones.
I tell my girls, I love you so much, that's why I stay here. My oldest daughter said, "Papa, did you get shot?" And I said, "No, the Russians don't have the budget for that this year."
I'm absolutely sure that we will win, but it's maybe not in this month, or maybe not to the end of this year, but it's as soon as possible. I'm absolutely sure that this is possible.
From the Donbass, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Regents University received several national recognitions this week. The Chronicle of Higher Education named Regent a great college to work for the 14th time. The school also earned top honors in 10 categories for the first time. Regent was also named a top-tier institution for the 4th year in a row by U.S. News & World Report. Regent University's Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. William L. Hathaway, says receiving this national recognition for the 4th time affirms Regent's unwavering commitment to cultivating academic and spiritual excellence. Coming up, the Abraham Accords have proved productive in the Middle East. The next step could be the Cyrus Accords, a potential partnership between Israel and Iran. See how Elon Musk could help make it happen right after this. The Abraham Accords have proven partnerships between Israel and its Arab neighbors are possible. Certain experts believe the time is coming when Israel and Iran could also work together, as they did more than 40 years ago. They even have a name for their plan, the Cyrus Accords. Here's Caitlin Burke.
Millions into a not-so-secret war against the Jewish state through its proxies Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Officials in Tehran making regular calls to wipe Israel off the map. But this penchant for destruction hasn't always been the case.
We just cannot permit the betrayal of our society and our country.
It's hard for Americans in 2022 to imagine what Iran was like when I was born in Tehran myself.
More than 40 years ago, Iran and Israel shared a mutually cooperative relationship, the two countries working together in areas like economic development, agriculture, and healthcare. CBN News national security contributor Eli Kohanim experienced that partnership firsthand.
My own father had conducted business with an Israeli company where he had brought in Israeli water engineers who were already at the time the most advanced in the world.
That relationship turned hostile during the 1979 Islamic Revolution when Ayatollah Khomeini took power. 4 decades later, the Abraham Accords proves partnership between Israel and its Arab neighbors is possible and even profitable. Now, some former State Department officials believe the natural next step could involve the Iranians themselves.
The people see the benefits of deals like the Abraham Accords that their neighbors are reaping. So they see the new jobs, the healthcare benefits, the economic benefits, and they're asking themselves, well, why shouldn't we get some of those benefits of cooperating with Israel?
There are protests going on right now And that's why speaking out in support of them is so important, and why offering them, an opportunity, to say you don't have to be a pariah, you don't have to be isolated, and, a deal like this could come to be.
As far-fetched as a partnership between Iran and Israel sounds, former U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor Victoria Coates and former advisor to the U.S. Representative for Iran, Len Khodorkovsky, say it's not just possible, it's the inevitable path to peace in the Middle East.
75 years ago, if I told you Germany, Japan, and Israel would be three of our greatest friends and democracies and capitalist partners and huge economies, you would have told me I was crazy. It's simply impossible to imagine. Yet here we are.
The two proponents have dubbed this potential peace deal the Cyrus Accords.
Cyrus the Great, who was a Persian king that liberated the Jewish people from Babylon and allowed them to go back to their traditional homeland and build their temple. He even financed the rebuilding of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem.
That act of inclusion and tolerance has always been held up as an example of what is possible in cooperation between people of different faiths but similar morals and values.
To get here, Coates and Khodorkovsky admit the current Islamic regime will likely have to go. And it may surprise you who they think could help make that happen.
Well, curiously, the answer may lie with none other than Elon Musk.
I was not expecting you to say that.
Elon's been in the news a lot recently, but one of the things that he has done is deploy a satellite-based internet service, which is called Starlink.
Liftoff of the Falcon 9.
Operated by Musk's company SpaceX, Starlink consists of a network of more than 2,000 private satellites. It's touted as being able to offer high-speed internet anywhere on Earth.
Bringing in uninterruptible and uncorruptible internet access that would not make its users targets, but rather allow them to communicate with each other, because that's the way the regime has stayed in power, is they literally will cut off the internet for days at a time and prevent people from communicating. And if they can communicate, they can coordinate.
In February, Musk was able to provide internet access to Ukraine, even as Russia attempted to jam all signals, a move Ukrainian military leaders say has kept critical lines of communication open.
The people of Iran want to live in a free and democratic country. And what the United States and Western powers need to do is to support the Iranian people in their quest for freedom.
We shouldn't wait until the day after the regime is gone. We should think about that day right now and prepare for that day, build those people-to-people ties, build business ties, create cultural connections. Work on practical projects that could potentially be, turned on the day after the regime is gone.
Coates and Khodorkovsky agree it's ultimately up to the Iranian people to take back their country. And amid reports of growing unrest, they believe that day could be coming. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Still ahead, a new school year has started for our children, and with the increase in social issues plaguing the world, we're going to take a look at ways to guide and protect them. We've got the story for you. It's all coming up next right here on CBN NewsWatch. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. With the new school year underway, parents are hoping for a successful start for their children, but social issues surrounding gender identity, pornography, and other challenges do threaten that success. Many of these dangers were once hidden, but they are now proudly presented. Dr. Danny Huerter is Vice President of Parenting and Youth at Focus on the Family, and he joined this week's The Prayer Link to talk about ways to navigate these challenging times while giving your children the tools they need to overcome.
First of all, what are some of these social issues that parents really need to be aware of right now as their kids are starting this new school year?
Well, really, one of them is the sexuality topic you just talked about, the pornography, LGBTQ conversations that are going around. Also, just on worldviews, multiple worldviews being talked through and talked about. If you look at also the addiction component from drugs to tech addictions to video game addictions that are really needing to be addressed and sometimes are ignored. And then when we look at just mental health in general, anxiety, depression, panic disorder has gone up. among kids that I've seen in my practice and throughout. And I know that right now many counselors have long waiting lists already, and the school year has just started. So a lot of challenges are coming at parents, and that's on top of chores, dishes, trying to conquer the house and take care of pets in the home and finances. It's really can be a stressful season for parents and families as they try to navigate the many demands that are on the family and the opportunities that sometimes are missed for conversations.
Well, your response, first of all, is what we want to get your response to this whole cultural shift that we're seeing with regard to gender identity and trans issues. What's your response to that?
Well, I mean, a key word that I heard throughout the show was momentum, right? There's a momentum shift. And right now, once you remove God from the centerpiece of a society, you begin to look at the next God in there, and that is just human beings in general. And so when you remove God, there's confusion, there's chaos, and right now it really saddens me to watch counselors and others really push kids towards deciding psychologically their gender. It's really a place that for me is a bit frustrating as a clinical social worker to see the push either way in politics coming into a place where it doesn't need to be. But really, from the belief of where we're at as Christians, we really come with a grace perspective.
Well, I want to also get your take on how parents right now should begin talking with their children about this, especially when, so many young people right now identify as gay or trans. So how should parents approach this conversation?
Yeah, first of all, just listening first. You want to step in, listen to your kids. What are they hearing? What are they seeing? What are their worldviews on it? And then stepping into that from a biblical truth, starting with the beginning of male, female. What is the difference between male, female? How did we start with that in Scripture? And then from there, starting to have just open conversations, dialogue. That's the important part. You're not going to solve that in one conversation, but you want to bring truth and you want to talk about the values of your home and where you're coming from and being very open with that. But again, with grace and understanding as you step into that. And then also looking at the resource. We have one here at Focus on the Family called Back to School. It's a free download that you can get. You can go to focusonparenting.com. Right on the front page, there's a very large download you can get, and you can look at all the different issues right now around this topic and also just sex education in general. And so as parents, really encourage you to step into the sex education place.
And Dr. Huerta, we know that pornography and other addictions like tech addiction, the kids are on their phones constantly. It's a huge trap for our young people. What can parents do to censor this, help their kids navigate and safeguard them from all of this addiction that we're seeing?
Yeah, be intentional.
Spiritually.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Both things. One is to put boundaries and limits and not be afraid to do so. You're not here to make your kids happy. You're here to guide them and then enjoy happiness along the way. And that can include boundaries and limits. That brings really good connection and attachment. And so one software that I've seen out there is Canopy. It has artificial intelligence, and it helps filter out pictures as they come in. And that's within Instagram, TikTok, and all those where you can accidentally run into pictures. And also put some software. There are a lot of protections that you can find online. Make sure you're putting those on the computers and devices. Have conversations about the limits and the necessity to have limits on those, including bedtime, the car, meal times, and then modeling it as a parent that it's good to have limits.
You can catch the prayer link on the CBN News channel this evening at 6:30. You can also find it on the CBN News app. Coming up, we're going to show you how a community comes together to help students in need, and we'll also have a message for you to tweet and share this Tuesday. Stay with us. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. It's a community effort to help some students in trouble in Elm Grove, Wisconsin. Police say a school bus driver likely couldn't see the end of a roadway and drove into several feet of standing water. You can see the bus left partially submerged and at a tilt. Police and school staff came to the rescue of the middle school students who escaped through the emergency exit. It was no excuse to leave school. Students reported to class and parents dropped off dry clothes. Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. I want to share this message with you and encourage you to post, tag, tweet, and share it with others. It is a great day to believe in yourself. Remember who you are and whose you are. God created you and equipped you with all you need to do what He's called you to do. Believe it, walk in it, bet on you, the you that God created wonderfully. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Would like to remind you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online. That address is cbnnews.com. And of course, we would love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us. The address is right there at the bottom of your screen. It's newswatch@cbn.com. You can also take the time to reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We certainly would love to hear from you. I hope you'll make this a terrific Tuesday and join us right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody. God bless, and thank you for watching.